I hope you've gained some understanding in this course about why God has to allow some evil to happen and why the removal of evil has to happen gradually. But that doesn't mean that God is just slacking off about evil. Swedenborg says God is always present, constantly at work and making an effort in us. And in divine providence, evil people are constantly leading themselves into evils. And the Lord is constantly leading them away from evils. And though Swedenborg likes to generalize about evil people to make his points, he also makes it very clear that we each have our dark side, which can lead us into trouble. So we can all learn something from this. As soon as evil came into being, God put into motion a plan to save us from it. And this plan had to work in a way that would be applicable on an eternal scale. That's why the first prediction of Jesus' birth happened so early in the book of Genesis. This plan has got to play out over a lot of earthly time. God is working constantly to lead each one of us and all of humanity in a better direction. The reason that everything divine providence does is done out of pure mercy is that the divine essence is pure love. This is what is working through divine wisdom, and this working is what we call divine providence. The pure love is pure mercy, and it is at work with the evil and the unjust, and with the good and the just alike. God never gives up on anyone. For those of us who are so determined to hang on to evil that we end up in hell, God is still working on leading us. Further in that same number, it says, divine providence is leading people who are in hell and rescuing them from it, constantly struggling with them in hell and fighting for them against the devil, that is, against the evils of hell. Constantly at work to make the unclean clean and the insane sane. And so it is constantly laboring out of pure mercy. And that is why it came into the world and underwent temptations, even to the final one, the suffering on the cross. And that outreach of mercy extends to any of us who have our minds immersed in hell while we're still on earth. And we all have states like this, states when we get captured by fears, suspicions, hostility, anger, greed, lust, deceit, etc. How much we can be led out of hell is completely up to our own willingness. But God will never, ever stop trying. The Lord is leading the good and our goodness toward its home in heaven. And the Lord is leading the evil and our own evil away from the home it has settled in to go in a better direction.
Luke chapter 15 has 3 parables that Jesus told that are all sharing messages about God's unconditional love for us and unceasing efforts to help us no matter where we are in life and no matter how lost we may have gotten. The first story is known as the parable of the lost sheep, and in it Jesus says to his critics, "Which one of you, having 100 sheep and losing one of them, does not leave the 99 in the wilderness and go after the one that is lost until he finds it? When he has found it, he lays it on his shoulders and rejoices. And when he comes home, he calls together his friends and neighbors, saying to them, 'Rejoice with me, for I have found my sheep that was lost.' Just so, I tell you, there will be more joy in heaven over one sinner who repents than over 99 righteous persons who need no repentance. And one layer of meaning in this parable is that the sheep symbolizes some goodness inside of us that has gotten lost in the shuffle of ignorance or ego, and how the Lord is working constantly to bring that goodness back into our awareness and back into focus in our lives. And when we have come to our senses, the Lord puts that goodness, that sheep, on his shoulders, meaning uses divine power to hold that goodness steady in our lives and to preserve it and maintain it in our journey as we move forward in the direction of heaven. That line about heaven rejoicing is reflected in Swedenborg's passage in Secrets of Heaven, in which he writes, "Above all, angels call on the goodness and truth we harbor and use it to block the evil and falsity stirred up by evil spirits. Being in the middle, we are free to turn toward one or the other. These are the kinds of ways angels from the Lord lead and safeguard us, which they do every moment and every fraction of a moment. If they stopped for only a second, we would plunge headlong into evil from which we could never again be led away. In doing this work, angels are motivated by love they receive from the Lord. Nothing gives them more pleasure and happiness than removing evil from us and leading us to heaven. Luke 15:7 shows that this is a joy to them. The Lord then takes utmost care of us constantly from the first rudiments of our life to its end and beyond to eternity, but hardly anyone believes it. The second parable in Luke 15 is a story about a woman who loses a coin in her house and does not stop cleaning until she finds it. And the deeper meaning of that story is about times in our life when we lose a sense of the truth. And the Lord is leading us to do that self-examination and look within until we regain that sense of truth, that connection with the Lord's truth that can give us guidance. And then finally in Luke 15, there is the famous story of the prodigal son. And it's a story symbolizing times when we take God's gifts and squander them and kind of make a mess of our lives in one way or another. And when that happens, does God write us off? Well, absolutely not, as you can see from the emotion in the story. In the story, when the son realizes how badly he's messed up and heads back toward his father's house, his father sees him from afar off and immediately runs to the son and embraces him and rejoices and brings him inside and gives him food and new clothing and a ring, which symbolizes when we come back toward the Lord embraces us and gives us new goodness, which is the food, and new truth, which is the clothing, and power to stay on that path, which is the ring. So God's yearning to embrace us and bless us is never going to stop. It's working constantly behind the scenes. And whenever we're ready to consciously open up to that divine love at our own pace, in our own time, it's always going to be right there. The Lord is right there.
For people that have willingly chosen a path to heaven, God is with them every step of the way. And if we're still struggling with evil, it doesn't mean that progress isn't happening. Swedenborg writes, "If we abstain from one sin or another that we have discovered in ourselves, this is enough to make our repentance real." When we reach this point, we are on the pathway to heaven, because we then begin to turn from an earthly person into a spiritual person, and to be born anew with the help of the Lord. And the process is going to happen just like we see processes happening in nature.
Every person is born with evil. The Lord leads a person into good through rebirth. It is clear from the Lord's words in John chapter 3, verses 3 and 5, that there is regeneration, and that you cannot march into heaven without being remade. It can be no secret in the Christian world that rebirth is purification from evils, and thus a renewal of life, for reason sees this too. By rebirth, a person is totally renewed in spirit, and this happens through a life according to the Lord's teachings. Who cannot see that this new beginning can only be done with time and in time, hardly different from the way a tree roots and grows from a seed and becomes a full-grown tree.
You could think about our process of spiritual growth like this tree growing up from a seed. It's a gradual process, and God is with us through every stage in that process. God never abandons anyone. God is with us everywhere, in every moment, but we have to know where to look. Divine providence is at work in the smallest details everywhere. Not only with the good, but with the evil as well. But it is not in their evils. When there's darkness on earth, all the organisms that are living in that darkness ultimately owe their life to the sun, but you won't find the sun's light itself in that darkness. Darkness is always the result of something blocking that light. It's the same thing with cold climates. Nothing would be alive in those climates without the sun's influence, but the cold itself is not caused by the sun's heat. When we see evil going on in the world, there can be an impulse to blame God for the evil. But even though God is always there as the general life force, you won't find God by looking at the evil. You're going to find God by looking at the efforts of goodness that crop up to confront that evil, or in the lessons learned while dealing with the evil, and in the efforts to bring healing. Remember our chart of what caused evil in the first place. Evil is the result of blockage, reversal, separation, and misuse. These are the human-caused wounds that allowed the system to be infected, and God's divine immune system has been working on it ever since. The problem is that people continuing to choose to do evil things drags out the healing process. Imagine if you got a cut that was starting to heal, but then every day you put 2 drops of infectious bacteria in it. How much longer would it take to heal? The human race is doing the equivalent of that by continuing to seek out negative ways of life. Healing can always happen faster and more efficiently if we cooperate with it. And we can all help in our own inner lives and with the world at large in all kinds of ways. We can learn to recognize evil as anything that opposes the spirit of people working in harmony with each other and caring about each other. And we can consciously cooperate with targeting and healing these wounds. For blockage, stop denying our Creator as the source of life. Make space in ourselves for divine love and wisdom to enter and dwell. For reversal, stop turning to the physical world and our own agenda for guidance. Turn back toward God's principles and teachings about loving one another. For separation, stop separating ideas and opinions from compassion and respect for others. Work to unite thoughts and actions with love, and in this way, unite in partnership with God. For misuse, stop using resources in ways that harm others or harm our world. Stop having self-centeredness and greed drive the way we use resources. Use things in ways that benefit the common good. If we set that general course, there will be infinite ways to absorb and express God's goodness, so that we can discover the way that all of humanity, including ourselves, can thrive. For every person that makes an effort to turn away from or address any aspect of evil, there's a little more room for the heavenly order of the divine design to flow in. And it's happening, and it will keep happening. And we can all be a part of keeping that flow going and increasing. Because the Lord is love itself, or the essence and living power of the love that everyone in heaven has, He wants to give everything that is His to the human race. Let's recap. God offers a constant invitation for us to participate in goodness. We get to freely consent, and when we do accept it, we start working on the team with God and all of the angels to dispel the darkness and bring our world more and more into an eternal light.